Hello and welcome back to Astral Path. This is a game that I made in a week for the 7-day Roguelike Challenge 2023, which is a game jam hosted on itch.io. And it's a pretty fun little game. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I'm going to be talking about some updates that I've made to it since the end of the game jam. This is not a game that I really want to spend a lot of time, like I don't want this to become a forever project sort of thing. So I'm going to demonstrate some things and talk about it a little bit, but mostly I just want this game to be done, and I did one video on it previously, so this is sort of just going to be an update video talking about the changes that I've made to it since then. And there have been quite a few changes, so some of those will be readily apparent. Let's just start a playthrough here as electricity. I'm picking this because this is the element that I've done the least testing with, so that's how it goes. Most of my testing was done with fire, and then more recently, because I was doing a lot of firewood builds, I ended up doing a whole bunch of testing with water after the fact. Hey, speaking of water, we got a water orb. That is a rare pickup. Here it should be 4 on the left and 3 on the right, or 1 on the right if you get a rare drop. Alright, so I guess that's one of the very first things I can quickly demonstrate here. Let's just grab this other chest. Oh, Voidstone, another rare drop. Okay, so from the inventory. Well, we have a water orb. Let's check that out. So we have new spells. New spells for each element. So we can add a capsize, 2 drown all, or a sanctuary, 2 bubble and 2 heal. Sanctuary unfortunately goes to fire, which is the opposite element, so that's a little bit questionable. However, Sanctuary is a pretty good card. Capsize is 2 drown to all enemies, which is a lot of damage over time. So really it just depends on how I want to do this. I'm really wanting to try to do a spark build, so I guess I'll grab Sanctuary and then hope for a Philosopher's Stone later so I can change the catalyst element. Another change here, if you scroll down in the inventory now, you can actually see your current health and experience. Alright, and I'm going to narrate through a couple of combats real quick here, and then from there I will just talk about all the changelog stuff while I play without talking in the background. It'll be a voiceover at that point. Alright, so combat. Assuming that you haven't seen the previous video, the way combat works in this game is that you have the ability to play any one of your cards from the start. So let's say I played that Submerge, the blue to yellow Submerge there. That would be a water going to electricity. That would mean that the next card I play this turn must be an electricity card. So I could play the Spark, I could play either of the Sparks, basically. If I played the Spark that goes into wood, I'd then be able to play Thorns, and if I played that Thorns, I'd be back into electricity and I could play the next Spark. And I would not be able to play that bubble because I don't have the ability to go to water at that point. But if I start with bubble and then do everything else in the same order, as you can see, I'll be able to chain all 5 cards together. So it's sort of the main gameplay gimmick here. So play the bubble. As you can see, I've got 2 bubble now, 2 drown, spark. One really nice quality of life change, as you can see, is that I played 1 spark and then the other spark's damage updated. That's going to persist for the rest of the battle. Give myself some thorns and play the other spark, and then hit 0 to end my turn. Alright, so here I guess I want to end with Sanctuary, probably. Yeah, let's do that. So we'll start with Submerge, then we'll go into Charge, which is nice to play every fight if you can, because that gives you a bonus to how much experience you get for the fight. Spark and Sanctuary. So we'll give ourselves 2 bubbles and then we heal for the amount of bubble that we have. And we're still going to take some damage here, so if I hit 1, I can't play this heal. And I guess I can actually go heal, Thorns, and then Spark for 4. So that added up, and then experience gain 3 instead of 2 because I played my charge. Alright, pretty strong start here. Let's just do one more fight real quick. Let's see, bubble. So bubble into Sanctuary would actually give me a heal of 4, which is pretty nice. And actually, I guess I'll just demonstrate that. So Sanctuary does update as well, so it'll tell you how much you heal for. But we're going to go into electricity instead of into fire. I feel like that's a better play. Also, it's just nice to play the charge as quickly as you can to get it out of the deck, because it's not actually a good card to have in your deck. You want to play it and then not be drawing it again. All right, so from here, well, if I start with the middle spark, I can then play everything. So let's just do that. I don't have a heal here, might as well just end the fight. Alright, and my first level up, I get a Water Orb, a Spellbook page, or a Void Stone. I guess I'll grab the Spellbook page just to demonstrate what that does. Those are all pretty good options. Also, max HP increases by 2, that's new. It used to be the case that the only way to gain increase in max HP was to have your first upgrade here be plus 2 HP, but that ended up being far better than any other option, so I just kind of made it the default so that hopefully you can actually enjoy some of the other perks that you could have. So we'll grab the spellbook page, and I actually have 2 spellbook pages here, so let's just use those. So we'll do one of those. This menu pops up, I can choose. I'm going to upgrade the charge, so it's now going to be worth 2 experience per play, which doesn't really make me stronger. I'll also upgrade the Sanctuary, because that's a pretty nice card. And then I have a Void Stone. I think I'm going to use the Void Stone on my heal. Get the heal out of my deck. Because the Sanctuary is sort of doing the same job. And another change you can see here, I have these +1s showing that those are my upgraded cards. Alright, and out of there. Okay. So the rest of this then, I guess will just be the post-commentary about what all the changelog is, but I'll be playing out the rest of the game, so hopefully you enjoy the footage or the commentary, or if not, I will see you for another project. I guess I'll just quickly mention I am doing another game jam project starting in a couple of days, so I kind of want this one just to be completely done. I'm planning on being finished with updating Astral Path until, like, unless some serious bugs get uncovered at some point. I should also probably mention that Astral Path is a free download on itch.io. If you want to try it, I'll put a link in the description for that. I'm not very good at promoting myself. And then I will have the, yeah, I'll be starting an RPG Maker themed 30-day game jam, which I will be doing for the month of April. And I'll be trying to do devlogs on that. So yeah, I'll see you then. Alright, and then for the rest of the video here, we'll just have gameplay playing in the background. I'm going to just go over the changelog. So this will be no more commentary on the gameplay. So changelog, as I said before, we had 1 week for the entire game jam, and I completed, I joined with only 5.5 days remaining, so I sort of gave myself an extra day of leeway. So first of all, what I changed in that 1 day is a whole bunch of stuff, actually. It's pretty amazing how much you can get done when you dedicate an entire day to programming. So, card list in inventory now shows level bonuses on cards. So previously, if you leveled up a card, you didn't have any indication in your inventory that the card was leveled up. I think this is a good change. A couple of game crashes here. The game no longer crashes in combat if you have fewer than 5 cards in your deck, and the game no longer crashes when attempting to modify card 2 or 3 in your inventory when you have a deck size of 1. And related to the small deck size issues, we have, when using spellbook pages, void stones, or philosopher stones, the text box now tells you what action you're actually doing instead of just saying that you're changing a card. And these items can no longer be used if you have a deck size of 0. When using a philosopher stone, the card pop-up now updates properly instead of being an empty template card. This is a very good change to have. I fixed a visual bug where opening the card scroller in the inventory would show the start of the list, but it actually remembered where the player previously was in the list. So for example, if you upgraded a card and then scrolled to the right twice and then picked a card, the next time you tried to upgrade a card, the list would show as being at the front of the list, but the computer was actually at position 3 on the list, and so whatever card you selected would be offset from where it was actually supposed to be. So that was important to fix, which I did. When scrolling cards in the inventory, card borders now show the correct color. So this one was kind of funny. Apparently, when I was originally programming this game, I had two completely different implementations of the code that shows you what a card's text is. And the combat scene and the inventory scene had completely different code for some reason. I don't know how that happened. Turns out that the combat code was trash and the inventory was actually pretty good. So I ended up copying the inventory code over into the combat so that it was consistent and that if I was fixing something, it would work in both places. The one thing that the combat code did better than the inventory code was that it had the colors, the border of the cards showing correctly. So that has been fixed everywhere now as well. Cards actually show upgrade effects in their text now. So previously, if you had your burn card, which does 3 damage, and you upgraded it, so it now does 4 damage, the card would still just say 3, but it now updates as you upgrade the card, which is nice. Enemies take more damage from their elemental weakness. So I have an elemental system in the game. Fire beats wood, beats electricity, beats water, beats fire. And if you're using a card of one element against an enemy that's the element that's weak to it, they take 1 extra damage. Similarly, when you pick your character at the start of the game, you're assigning your own element, and enemies that match your weakness, so if you're playing wood and you're fighting a fire enemy, the fire enemy will be created with +1 attack. I added terrain effects, 1 terrain for each element, and I guess I'll just quickly list those here. So the fire terrain, which is lava, if you are not fire element at the end of your turn, you take 1 damage. The wood terrain, which is grass, if you are wood element at the end of your turn, you gain 1 life. For electricity, we went with static field, which increases the damage of electricity attacks by 1. So in the case of the enemies, they do 1 more damage than it shows if it's an electric enemy on an electric terrain. And in the case of the player, your electric cards do +1 damage while you're on electric terrain. And then water, if you are water element in water terrain, you take 1 less damage from all attacks. Relics were changed. Previously, if you beat an elemental boss, it would drop a relic, and if you got 1 relic of each element, it would open up the chaos portal to the final world, where you would then be able to fight a boss, and beating that boss would let you win the game. But the relics didn't have any purpose beyond that. Now, when you pick up a relic, it will effectively add 1 level to all cards of that element in your deck. So relics are really good now. And it does stack, so if you wanted to clear 2 fire levels, you would get 2 fire relics, which is 2 levels on all your fire cards. You only need 1 to unlock the chaos portal, and the enemies do get stronger with every portal you go through, so it's a trade-off there, but you can stack 1 relic if you really want to. Made the final world more chaotic. Basically, now that I have the elemental terrain implemented properly, I just scattered random chaos everywhere. Cards now refresh mid-turn, allowing effects like Spark to update with each card played. So Spark was the main reason for this, but there were some other cards that also can be modified mid-turn. But basically, if you have 2 Sparks in your hand and you played 1, the other one would still just show the previous damage. It wouldn't update until the end of the turn. So I fixed that so it would update immediately upon playing 1 of them. When you play cards in combat, the remaining cards are filtered down, so the hotkeys always correspond to the placement of the card as seen on the screen. So if you have cards 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you play card 2, previously you would be left with cards 1, 3, 4, 5, but now you're left with 1, 2, 3, 4. This one, this is something that I actually had 2 people play my game and give feedback on it, and one of them really liked the change and one of them really didn't. So hard to say whether this is a good change or not, but anyway, it is something that I implemented. Probably one of the biggest changes, though, aside from terrain, is that I added 12 new cards to the game and modified the orbs so that the orbs now give you the more powerful cards instead of just additional duplicates of your starting cards. So that's 3 cards per element, and those greatly accelerate the power curve of the player. I also added 8 new rare cards on top of that, 2 per element. These are offered every time you use 5 of one orb of an orb of one type. So your 5th wood orb will give you a rare wood card as an option. And these rare cards are significantly more powerful than the other cards. So stacking a bunch of orbs of one type is also really good to do. Added realm modifiers to make different worlds feel more distinct. So when you're going through a portal, now it'll say regular realm or wealthy realm or something like that. These affect the map generation of that particular world. So it's not just a matter of the sizes being different, but there's actually other reasons to make your choices. And finally, I modified the end of turn sequence so that Drown does damage before enemies attack. So previously, Drown is kind of like this game's poison mechanic. And previously, at the end of the turn, the enemy would attack and then it would take its Drown damage. Now they take the Drown damage first. This makes water significantly more powerful. And I think I considered water to be the weakest element before making this change. So this is one reason I wanted to do this. Another reason is that I was trying to differentiate Drown and Thorns, because Thorns also has the effect where the enemy attacks you and then takes the damage. So by doing it this way, you now have both Drown and Thorns having a different timing component to it, so they feel more different from each other. It's a pretty big buff to water. So all of that happened in one day. Beyond that, it's been, I want to say a couple of weeks at this point. I've been playing the game a few times periodically through that period, and also gotten a little bit more feedback from people, and a bunch more changes came in. This stuff is mostly going to be balance and bug fixes. So the first one was that relics no longer get added to your inventory at the start of the boss fight. This is because the way that loot drops work in fights in this game is that you get the loot the instant you start the fight. This was in the combat initialization, because it didn't matter if you got it at the beginning or the end, so I figured I might as well just throw it in with the initialization while I was doing everything else. Well, once I modified the relics to make your cards stronger, it turns out that, attacking that fire boss suddenly makes layer fire cards more powerful before the fight's even over. So I had to change that and put the loot rewards where you would actually expect them to be in the turn sequence there. Fix the third enemy and 3 enemy encounters not being affected by lava or grass. I have no idea how this happened. These terrains worked fine for enemies 1 and 2, but enemy 3 was just missing 2 lines of code for some reason. So that was an easy fix. I fixed the Philosopher's Stone UI again. I thought I had fixed it, and then something else went wrong, and so I fixed it again. Hopefully it is working as intended. Thunderclap. This is one of my new electricity cards, and its effect seems pretty simple. You draw a card, and then it removes itself from your deck, so you just get the card once per fight. This card caused all sorts of weird bugs. First of all, it could draw itself if you had no cards left in your deck and you played it. It was also a problem if it was forcing you to shuffle your deck, because the card that was removed wasn't always Thunderclap. Sometimes it would just remove a different card from your deck. And it would also cause issues where you'd start a battle with 4 cards instead of 5. And be able to remove the cards from your deck for the rest of the battle. And I think this was also why sometimes when playing with Thunderclap, you would open your inventory and the game would just crash, because it's causing all sorts of problems. So fixing up the Thunderclap card, making the code a lot cleaner there, helped out with a lot of things. As a side effect of this, I also wanted to clean up Kindle, which is the other card in the game that has a draw effect, just to make the 2 effects consistent. So the consequence of that is that Kindle can now no longer draw itself. If your deck consists of only 5 cards, and one of those cards is Kindle, playing Kindle will no longer cause you to redraw Kindle. And this means that it's no longer possible to go infinite. There was somebody who managed to beat the very first Game Jam version of this game by doing that strategy, going down to a 5-card deck with a Kindle and upgrading Kindle so it drew more than 1 card, and effectively being able to play an infinite number of cards every single turn from the start of battle. That is no longer possible. I've tweaked game balance quite a bit. Basically, monsters are weaker in the first world, but then their growth per portal is faster than it used to be. However, I did previously nerf it from the original Game Jam version, so it should be still easier than the Game Jam version if you've tried that one. I also made bosses stronger because I felt like there wasn't enough of a distinction in stats between bosses and regular fights. I tweaked monster growth parameters. The probability space is still the same, but the probabilities are skewed. So monsters are more likely to gain health instead of attack as you're advancing in worlds. Fire Blast, one of the new fire cards. I've done a ton of fire runs during testing, and I was never tempted to take the Fire Blast card. So that told me that this card wasn't very good. So I increased its damage. I also changed its effect so that it hits the front enemy instead of a random enemy, in the hopes that this makes Fire Blast more worth considering. Sanctuary. Sanctuary was one of the new water cards. It has an effect where when you play it, you gain 2 bubble, and then you gain 1 life, you heal for 1, for each bubble that you have. So it's a pretty powerful water card. However, there was a bug with it, where when you leveled it up, you would gain additional life for each bubble on top of gaining additional bubble, which was really broken. So that effect has been fixed. Sanctuary is now just, plus 2 bubble, and you heal 2 life in this case if you didn't have any bubble beforehand. You upgrade it once, you now get plus 3 bubble, but you're still only gaining 1 life per bubble. Still worth upgrading, it's a very powerful card. Enemies are now worth more experience as the world level increases. So previously it was just every fight was worth 2 experience, but now the experience value goes up by 1 for each world, so you can still level up on the later worlds. And finally, I fixed a visual bug relating to the Spark cards. If you have... so again, every time you play a Spark, the damage value of all Sparks in your deck increases by 1 for the rest of the battle. But I was resetting the Spark counter at the beginning of the battle, and the consequence of this was that in your inventory, if you were trying to upgrade cards, the Spark cards would still be showing the value that they had at the end of your last battle, which could be confusing. So I modified that so that the Spark counter resets at the end of battle so that that was no longer an issue. And then with that particular version, my brother managed to beat the game. He was playing as water, for what it's worth. So that's cool. The game is confirmed beatable, even with the changes to Kindle, so that you don't have to go with an infinite strat. However, there was an issue with the game balance, so I made a few more changes from here, from the version that he beat. One issue was that when you're leveling up, one of the level up options that you get is plus 2 health per level. I decided that this was... how do I put this? This was necessary because enemies would get to a point where they would just be able to one-shot you if you weren't upgrading your health with every single opportunity that you had, which is unfortunate because I spent a lot of time making all these little level up bonuses that you could pick and having the distribution be skewed depending on which class that you started out as. But in the end, none of that mattered because taking more health was always just the best option. So now every time you level up, you gain 2 max health just for free. And you can gain an additional 2 health if you choose the level up option, the health perk. But hopefully now you can actually take some of the other benefits without feeling like you're just going to get killed by all the enemies. Speaking of other benefits, one of them was a rare shard level up bonus. So 4 shards makes an orb. And I had I think it's a 1 in 8 chance that you'd be offered 2 of every shard as a level up bonus, which is half of each orb. The thing is, even though that adds up to 2 full orbs worth of shards, the orbs themselves aren't always going to be useful for you. If you're playing water, then wood is the opposite end of the element tree, so you might not be able to integrate wood cards into your deck easily. Same deal with fire and electricity. So this was actually a lot less useful than I initially thought it would be. So I upped that to 3 shards of each type, which is effectively 3 orbs worth of shards, which is pretty powerful. But again, they're not all going to be useful for you necessarily. Storm, which is the ultimate electricity card, was buffed because the ultimate cards for each element are pretty insane, and Storm was underwhelming compared to the other 3. So Storm's effect is that it's basically a spark, but instead of it counting as 1 spark when you play it, it counts as 2. And also for every spark that you've played, its damage increases faster as well. I've now upped it from +2 to +5. I still think it might be underwhelming compared to the others, which is just, I guess, a hint as to how powerful some of the other cards are. But Storm should be very good if you manage to get a spark deck off with that card in it. And finally, the last change was just a quality of life thing. I made it so that in the inventory you can see your health, your experience that you need to get to the next level, and the number of relics that you have in your inventory page. So previously you just had to remember how much of each of those things you had, but now you can look it up if you are curious as to what your current values are. And yeah, those last 4 changes that I made, it's 1 quality of life improvement and then 3 changes that are just purely beneficial to the player. So I'm confident the game is still possible to beat. And with that, that is pretty much everything I wanted to do with the Astral Path game. It was a really fun game jam project to work on, but I want to be moving on to other things. In fact, in a couple of days, I will be starting another game jam project. This is an RPG Maker themed game jam, which has a 1-month time limit, so this will be significantly longer than the 1 week I had for this game. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. I'll probably be doing some sort of devlog kind of thing with it, so stay tuned for that if you're curious to see what other game programming stuff I am up to. I will see you then.